I'm your host, Bill Hannon, for this show. I have two friends giving me a hand co-hosting, herbalist Gary Catt and Josie Way. Today I have the pleasure of introducing a friend of mine who I've known for many years, many similar interests, Brett Mayette, who right now is focusing on an endeavor for conscious cuisine. And so the thing is that he's going to be sharing with us many trains of thought concerning how to, through whole foods, get the nutrition you need to live a healthy lifestyle. So, Brett, good to meet you again.
Nice to see you. Thank you for having me. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
And yes.
So I'd like to just, what got you interested? I mean, I know a lot about your history over the years, even going back to working with your uncle and my friend Roger and whatnot, but what really got you focused on the benefits of eating whole foods?
Of edible wild plants. Well, I go back probably 25 years ago. I have been in the restaurant business as a waiter, front of the house, for 4.5 decades. Used to cook tableside in California in a fancy restaurant at a hotel. So I came back to Rhode Island and started growing salad mix and other specialty herbs and edible flowers for the local farmers market. Mm-hmm. So whenever I would look at a garden catalog, I would want to grow like lemon basil and edible flowers, nasturtiums, borage, and so on. So I started doing that, and then I believe in 1995, I had a friend of mine from Maine who was an herbalist and forager who came down to visit her children in Rhode Island, and I said, come on over to my garden, Paul, and let me show you the 60 types of heirloom tomatoes that I was growing. So back in the mid-90s, heirloom tomatoes were taking the world by storm. Mm-hmm. So she came over, I had 60 varieties all teepeed, and it turned out she could give two hoots about the heirloom tomatoes. We were standing together, and in a 10-foot circumference, she picked out about 8 edible wild plants. So that was the spark that started in my brain. Dandelion was there, plantain, purslane, lamb's quarter, and so on.
Right.
So from then on, I started my education, slowly learned about edible wild plants and so on. And through the next 10 years or so, I was sneaking edible wild plants into my salad mix, and people were commenting how delicious it was and so on. And then in 2008 or 9, I was blessed enough to be invited to an herbal apprenticeship program with a friend of ours, mm-hmm. Michael Ford, Apollo mm-hmm. Herbs, who went through the pharmacognosy doctorate program at URI. Like, surprisingly enough, the University of Rhode Island has a doctorate program in pharmacognosy, which is plant medicine right. and plant pharmaceuticals. So he did, along with the three of us, I believe, a 9-month, 1 weekend a month herbal right. apprenticeship program. So that really kind of started to coalesce the food is medicine, nutrition, preventative health thing.
And the thing also is Gary and I both were at different times, and he even before either one of us took that thing with that apprenticeship with Michael Ford. He took it, and I took it after you took it, so it was very interesting.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes. So briefly, I became more interested in wild foods. Michael and another herbal teacher, Chris Morano, had said, food is medicine. And so anyway, that really started to crystallize. But the aha moment that you really asked about, I was at an event called the International Herbal Symposium, I believe in 2009. It's a gathering of herbalists from all over the world and people who are interested in plants. We meet at Wheaton College in June, mm-hmm. and I heard a very interesting talk by a gentleman named Dr. Kevin Spellman, who talked about evolutionary nutrition. And the premise behind the talk was prior to the age of agriculture, when humans were hunter-gatherers, we just traveled around, we didn't live anywhere, we followed the seasons and so on, and we ate whatever we could find or we perished. Mm-hmm. So even though that seems, like a long time ago, 10 or 20,000 years ago, before the age of agriculture, he claimed or supposed that we are still genetically wired to eat a huge diversity of foods. So probably when humans were hunter-gatherers, they probably ate thousands of different foods over the course of the season.
Right.
So he in this talk said that we should probably be eating 150 to 180 to 200 different foods. So I really promote diversity of diet, and that's kind of where it came from.
Right, and some of the plants that you actually are able to find in the field are actually a lot more nutritious
Yes.
than things, especially with the hydroponics right now.
Yes.
How much, nutrition are these plants picking up?
Well, that's a complicated question.
Yeah.
Like, food is medicine.
True.
What is more beneficial, if you grow in the earth in a natural way, or if you use hydroponics, and how do they clash at all?
I do not know a lot about hydroponics. I know originally that hydroponic gardening was basically chemicals in soluble water.
Right.
There may be an organic system that is being developed now, but eating hydroponics or eating raw vegetables and real food is better than nothing.
Sure.
I
absolutely.
would prefer to eat things from the ground, but I'm not qualified enough to really comment on that.
Exactly. It's...
The older-fashioned ways of gardening before we became, sophisticated, of letting the plants, after they've died, let them rot, let them resubmit the herbal content.
Yeah, the minerals and all the stuff that the roots have picked up in the plant will now die into the soil.
Because the modern techniques don't account for that.
Right. Well, again, chemical fertilizers, which are basically derived from oils, are the NPK components. But what we're looking for is like long-rooted plants that are burdock root and dandelion root,
Yes.
or even alfalfa, which, the roots extend 6 feet into the ground. They pull up all the minerals back up to the soil, onto the surface. When they die, all those minerals are now easy getting for the plants that have shallow root systems, and such as the plantain or the other things that you had mentioned, the other plants, the sheep sorrel.
Sheep sorrel, purslane.
Purslane, lamb's quarter.
Lamb's quarter, yes. So I really specialize in common weeds that grow in vegetable gardens or perennial gardens. So they're weeds, unless you're, live in a city and never walk around out in your lawns or whatever, these are plants that, you're familiar with. And they're superfoods. Answer to your question, there are some varieties, and actually this book right here in the front, Eating on the Wild Side, really talks, this woman did a really great job of doing research. So basically there are certain varieties of fruits and vegetables that are way more nutritious than other varieties. Like, for example, Granny Smith apple, which is sour, is way more nutritious than a sweet
Macintosh.
Well, I'm not off the top of my head. Like the newer varieties of apples now,
Sure.
They're bred for sweetness, and you eat one and it's like eating a candy bar. They're sweet, they're super sweet. Whereas a Granny Smith apple is sour and is more nutritious, surprisingly, and like crab apples. There are some types of crab apples that have 10 to 20 to 50 times more nutrition than a regular apple. So this woman here talks about she's got chapters in the books on brassicas and root vegetables and so on. So she has done analysis of varieties of fruits and vegetables that are way more nutritious. Getting back just for a moment to the 150 to 180 to 200 different plants. So that sounds very, very daunting that, we should be eating that variety of vegetables and fruits and so on. But if you, for example, took a green, yellow, and red bell pepper those would be considered 3 different foods.
Right.
Sure.
Because they have the chemical constituents and the pigments and so on that make them different. So when you really think about that, and then the culinary herbs, which there are 20 or 30 of them, along with the wild foods, it's doable. So my message when I do these educational talks and so on is getting out of the habit of eating the same foods all the time and really diversify your diet. And the reason we should do that, and this goes back to the talk that I heard at the IHS, the International Herbal Symposium, is that every plant has anywhere from 500 to 5,000 different chemical constituents. You know, terpenes and saponins and things that make blueberries healthy, the I'm going to say it wrong, anthocyanins that make it purple. So all of those chemical constituents in the plants are like, think of it as little building blocks of the 30,000 proteins that the body makes for all of its processes. So the more diverse the raw material or molecules or chemical constituents and phytochemicals that are used to make the 30,000 proteins that the body uses for its process, the healthier you're going to be.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's really my message.
The modern supermarket is very in sync with that because they have large selections of fruits and vegetables that they didn't have previously.
Yes.
You have a lot more. It's not all organic. It's, you know, there are various sources, but you do have a wide selection for diversity.
Right, right. And the thing is with organic, I mean, you can taste the difference between something advertised as organic and something that is not. But the thing is, like, one of the most prominent vegetables I could think of is the carrot. If you have a organic carrot versus a non-organic carrot, you can really taste the difference. I mean, it just pops, the flavor just pops in your mouth, you know, with the organic carrot. Other plants, it probably doesn't really matter that much as far as what you're picking up and the benefits you're getting. But I found it very interesting that a presentation I was listening to not long ago said that if you're going to eat meats, get the wild harvested fish and game meats, because the game has been feeding on all these different types of plants throughout its life, and the nutrition in the muscle that deer or other animals may have is really so easily assimilated by your body because, you know, it breaks down meat to meat. But, you know, all the vitamin Ks and B vitamins and root plants that, you know, bring up the nutrients to the leaves that they eat. They say it's much more beneficial to enjoy a game or wild fish, not farm raised.
Yes.
Brett, would you talk about when we used to go out to West Greenwich to the fire ceremonies and you'd cook and do the wild foraging? I remember at some point you were making smoothies. Could you talk about what plants are good when they're wild crafted that make good smoothies?
Wow. Fruit-based ones or the vegetable ones?
It's up to you which ones you want to address.
All right. So yeah, there's a lot of literature and books on, you know, incorporating. I mean, a lot of times when you make smoothies at home, you're, you know, being told to use kale and spinach and so on. But so the thing that I do in regard to the wild plants is I show people how to simply incorporate them into their diet. I will get to your question in just a moment, but this made me think of a point that's kind of important. So, I mean, so for example, I make wild plant pestos.
Yes.
So that's, you know, I just substitute edible wild plants into a pesto recipe instead of basil.
Sure.
And it's really different. It's unusual. When I do a cooking demonstration or a cooking class, I will take different edible wild plants. Like, for example, if you go down out in your yard and like pick dandelions and just have a dandelion salad, it's going to taste terrible because the bitterness of it.
It's bitter.
Yeah.
American diet
They're not
has
used to that taste.
so much salt and sugar in our diets that bitter foods taste really terrible. But what I found when I do my salads and so on is I usually take, for the texture, 1/3 of romaine lettuce or a crunchy lettuce, 1/3 of salad greens from the garden or the store, things I've grown or things I've gotten at the farmer's market. And then I take 1/3 of a variety of wild plants. So I just don't use dandelion. I'll put purslane in or lamb's quarter or
Lamb's quarter is excellent.
chickweed and so on.
Yes.
So I just and there's some of the less known edible wild plants, goutweeds or bishop's weed, which tastes like flat leaf parsley.
And here we are talking about herbalism just by incorporating this, such as the chickweed is just so beneficial for the urinary tract system.
Yes.
All these plants have their own special, organ system that they are helping.
Dandelions help.
Dandelions are great for the
system
kidneys,
also.
and the roots are great for the liver.
Yes.
I mean, both detoxifying organs in your body, and the dandelion is used in so many different ways, including dandelion wine.
Definitely. And wild violet was the last thing that I used. So anyway, when you put together a salad with a variety of edible wild plants and flavors, there's a synergy of flavors that's absolutely delicious. And in regard to what you just said, there is an overlay of, there are many edible wild plants and even common foods that are medicinal as well as food plants. So for example, you just said burdock and dandelion. So those, along with yellow dock, are one of the classic herbal trio for blood, liver,
Blood
cleanser,
cleaning.
and all of that, and especially in the spring. But from a wild food standpoint, like one of the things I do in my cooking class is I'll take the mirepoix, which is the classic French combination of onion, carrot, and celery,
Yes.
sautéed, but I will take dandelions, burdock, which is a Japanese or Asian root vegetable called
Yes.
gobo, and then sometimes Queen Anne's lace or wild parsley, which
Yes.
is really strong flavored parsnip flavor, and then sometimes sunchokes.
Now, let me ask you this. Queen Anne's lace, isn't that wild carrot?
Yes, Queen Anne's lace, wild
So
carrot.
what part do you use? Because the root is poisonous, right?
I don't think so.
No, okay. Well, I was told that wild carrot or Queen Anne's lace, the root was poisonous.
Oh no, I'd be mixing it up with a wild carrot or
Great.
wild.
I just
no,
saw
it's
something.
white. It's white.
Yes, it is white,
Do you?
yeah.
I mean, the Queen Anne's lace or the wild carrot is a cautionary. You have to be careful because it can be mixed up with hemlock,
Oh, okay.
which grows. I believe I'm not sure where it really grows, but the Queen Anne's lace or the wild carrot has hairs on it, like really fine hairs, and more like a carrot top versus the hemlock.
That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a little different. And again, I'm not a botanist per se.
No,
but,
no.
So I will do a medley of those ingredients I just said with garlic, toasted sesame oil,
Right.
and make a sautéed carrot, onion, celery root medley with millet. And so that's one of the things I'll do in the carrot.
That's fantastic.
Wild class.
And,
Wild
that's
foods
right.
class.
That's right. The foraging classes that you used to have down at the farm were fantastic because you would not only talk about the plants, you take them out, walk through the fields, pick them, bring them back, and prepare them for everybody
Yes.
to enjoy. And that
Yes.
was, you walked the talk.
Yes. Well, thank you.
Yes.
How does juicing
Oh, so
apply,
yes. I'm sorry.
apply to when you wild forage? What are the benefits of juicing in regard to the foraging of wild plants?
Well, a lot of the wild, so when you juice something, you're getting the real intensity of the plant. So going back just for a moment to what you asked about the green shakes.
Yep.
So based on books that I did not write, if you use a little bit of oil or apple in shakes or smoothies along with wild plants, like the apple or the oil will cut the bitterness. So you can certainly add dandelions or purslane or lamb's quarter, which is basically called summer
Carrot
spinach.
juice or beet juice.
Carrot juice, beets, and all that. So, it's really for the taste. I mean, you can add ginger. Me personally, if something's good for me, I'll eat it no matter how bad
Right.
it tastes.
That's
Well, being an herbalist.
An example for dandelion greens, they're very, very bitter, and if you could take one thing away from this talk is like, I would say, eat 2 or 3 dandelion leaves before either lunch and dinner because it's a digestive enzyme.
And it helps digest your food.
Exactly.
And over in Europe, I mean, they recognize the importance of bitters for the digestion, and that's part of their now. But I'd like to also ask you, just in case somebody wants to get in touch with you, is what your business name? Is there a way they can get in touch with you? Or?
Yes. Well, yes and no. Yes. So the name of my little cottage business is called Conscious Cuisine.
Conscious Cuisine?
Conscious Cuisine.
Yes,
and
thank you.
my email address is brett@consciouscuisineri.com. My website needs to be redone. I've had WordPress problems and so on. So if so that you will not get a hold of me through WordPress. However, if you do Google my name, there's no one in the country that has my name, Brett Mayette. So if you Google me, you can check out like some of the things I've done in the last 5 or 8 years with the local papers down in South County and so on.
South County, there's a wealth of information because you've been in many articles that have been published.
I'm very passionate about this, and if I may say, my vision is like there are edible wild plants everywhere. Think of dandelions. They grow everywhere in the world. Here's one other book I need to mention. This is called The Wild Wisdom of Weeds. It is subtitled 13 Essential Plants for Human Survival. It's a book about the 13 most common weeds that grow on the planet and how nutritious they are. The woman who wrote this should be lauded. It's a paradigm-shifting book. And basically, there's free food everywhere in nature, especially here in Providence and the surrounding urban communities where they have the community gardens and so on. So what I want to do is I would love to do a statewide initiative where I have a portable 3-burner cooking unit. I can go to a community garden and whip up a dinner right on site. But I would really love to go around to the state and make everybody aware of all of the nutritious wild plants that are growing in vegetable farms, urban landscapes, and so on. And it's important because in this age of food insecurity and lack of fresh food and so on, it's more important now than ever.
Right. So can we shift gears a little bit?
Whatever you want, Bill.
I'm looking to so many people look at things that are growing in the garden or around the house that are considered invasive. Yet there are some really very interesting benefits from some of these plants, the root systems, the fruit and whatnot. And I see you have an invasive plant medicine book here.
Yes, this book will probably offend some people because it's called Invasive Plant Medicine.
Right.
And it is a book about invasive plants.
Allowing them.
Yes.
Looking for them.
Well, yes, it's...
but it's a good way to keep them in check, too. If you harvest them because you're going to use them, you're able to... I mean, some of them are actually very beneficial for things even like cancer. It's amazing the strengths that some of these plants have.
Yes. This book's really a treasure. I mean, for example, Japanese knotweed, which grows completely invasive, grows all over the highways nearly
railway, all the rails.
Impossible to eradicate. It is one of the best sources of resveratrol on the planet. So resveratrol is one of the strongest antioxidants. Goes back to the French study 30 years ago. Why are the French so healthy when they eat, triple brie cheese and eat all this butter and so on? And it's the antioxidant. So the whole thing of drinking red wine was the source of resveratrol.
Exactly.
However, if you go to the health food store and look at resveratrol bottle with the supplement, it's basically powdered Japanese knotweed root.
That's right.
And so this invasive plant is one of the best sources of one of the best sources of resveratrol on the planet. And then in the springtime, when the plant grows up to about knee or thigh high, it's sour like rhubarb. So you can make a fruit sauce out of it with a little bit of honey or sugar, just cook it down and so on. So nature is full of food and medicine. And we're just, a little tentative to go out and harvest it.
Well, I remember one time I was over your house, you actually had a little get-together. In fact, I think it was one of your birthday celebrations. And you actually had made the basil pesto with the lamb's quarter.
Okay, if you say so, I did. I make lots of pestos and I mix it up.
That
Yeah.
was
Yes.
phenomenal.
Yes.
Because you had the basil just bursting, and then you had and it just added depth to the taste.
Yes.
And the aftertaste. It just was so good.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Brett, going back to the invasive plants, kudzu is one of the most invasive plants. Are there any medical benefits? Can you eat kudzu? Could you make it into a salad, or would it be,
Yeah. What
not
benefits?
able to do so?
I'm not sure, because let me check in the table of contents here really quickly and see if kudzu, yes, kudzu is here. I don't think we have time for me to look up
Right.
Okay.
237.
Have you ever used kudzu in a salad?
I don't
I don't know if you
I
had it
think
in a salad,
kudzu. I think kudzu may grow in a more tropical or warmer climate. I'm not even aware. I don't think it's here. 237. Let me just check.
As far as I understand, kudzu grows all the way from Georgia to Canada.
Okay. Well, I
the East
am
Coast.
common name kudzu vine. It's in the pea family. Medicinal uses: whole plant, root, leaf. Chinese medicine, dispels wind. Oh, this is getting too technical.
well, that's good. I mean, again, it's just.
But anyway, kudzu is in here. But
gonna
no, off
research
the top of my head, I'm not a botanist
It's not
or an
part of
expert.
your
It's not
your
at the top of
culinary
mind.
palate
Well, it's not
right
at
now.
top of mind. But
Yeah,
so
right.
I'm sorry, I do not know
That's
the
okay.
answer to that
I'll research
question.
it when I have time.
Yeah. So very good. That's great. Well, I'd like to thank our audience for visiting us today and being able to be part of this discussion we're having with Brett Mayette of Conscious Cuisine. And, it's very interesting, some of the different ways that plants can be used.
Yes.
What are some of the most common plants that can be added in this Rhode Island area?
I'm sorry that you said it can be eaten.
Can be added to
Oh, added.
to foods.
Look, dandelion. I mean, if you go out in your backyard or go out into your vegetable garden, or people ask me where can I get edible wild plants? Go down to the neighbor's vegetable garden, and they'll all be growing there. So,
Right. And some of these plants are so strong. I mean, they're usually, like you mentioned, burdock root and sheep sorrel. I mean, those are two of the major
Yes.
components for the 4-herb tea that they use for cancer
For
treatment.
cancer.
But just for example, I mean, dandelion, a cup of dandelion greens has a third of all the vitamins and minerals you need every day. And, vitamin A, C, vitamin A and C we associate with carrots and oranges, but leafy greens have high amounts of
Another way,
vitamin A and C.
if you don't like the bitterness, the thing is to pick them off plants before they've had the flowers, because once they flower, that's when more of the lactic
acid,
acid gets into the leaves. But once they're putting all the energy into the flower instead of into the leaf, the leaves are much more tender, much more
Yes.
palatable.
Yeah.
Well, as I said, I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's all right. I was just going to ask you about, do you use clover? Because it's more palatable.
Clover is I use clover for a tea, and we'll put it in like a green drink and so on, but clover is one of the things that I believe a cow has to, uses its four stomach chambers to digest.
Break down.
Yeah, we're not supposed to eat clover, I don't think, in like a salad per se. It is a tea, the flowers
The
are...
flowers are a great tea, especially
tincture.
for
Yes.
female issues.
Red clover tincture.
Yep.
I was just going to say, so an example, the dandelion, which is really bitter, so I'll tell people, put it in a roll-up or eat it with blue cheese, or eat it with blue cheese or an Italian Asiago, whatever. Just hide the flavor, but just,
Right.
eat them because
Right.
they're really nutritious for you.
Right. Right, and it keeps the filtering action of the kidneys clean.
Yes.
It helps prevent the formation of stones. I mean, it's very.
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, it's very interesting the way that it works with your kidneys.
And if I may, one cool fact, one of the most interesting things I've learned in the last 10 years was hemoglobin, which is, our blood transport oxygen and iron and so on. And then you have chlorophyll, which is the blood of the plants.
Right.
Exact same chemical structure, except hemoglobin has an iron atom in the
Right.
middle, and chlorophyll magnesium. So I'm not a scientist per se, but you know,
Very interesting.
my ultimate belief is that we should be eating 25 to 30% of our diet leafy greens and salads and chlorophyll for optimal health.
I've switched to eating the leafy greens the last 6 months.
They're
and
super important.
I feel a lot better.
And so great for prebiotic as well as a probiotic.
Oh, everything.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
So thank you very much again for tuning in for tonight's show, and
Thank you for having me.
it was
a
great.
pleasure.
And this hopefully won't be